So this first question was, how do you come up with the giant set format for training? I can't remember how in depth you got in the video, and obviously we haven't released it yet. So,
do you think I should talk about like the idea behind the giant set or the actual setup?
Yeah, whatever you want. I mean, maybe both.
The whole idea behind the giant sets was that I didn't have the time to train.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk.
And honestly, my training wasn't like trying to be the best powerlifter I could be or the best strongman. It was about MMA and performance and stuff. And it was more about like working things I needed to work and stick to the basics and be explosive and athletic and all the normal stuff. And so I just started throwing in giant set format because when I got into counterterrorism, I was traveling all the time and I didn't have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday to train. It was literally like, you're going to train at 2 o'clock in the morning this day, and then next day you have noon, and then you're not going to train for 4 days, and then you're going to have one day, and then, you know what I mean? So it was either like go to like a full body thing, which I wasn't really that interested in. I still cared about how much I could squat. I still cared about how much I could deadlift. So I just threw it in giant set format. And my basic idea was so that it didn't take as much away from, like if I was going to do my bench, I would work a row before my bench. So I was working the antagonistic beforehand. If I was doing a lower body day, I would do something kind of ballistic, like a jump or like a swing to get something hinging as fast as possible and then go into a deadlift or a, you know what I'm saying? So I'd set it up intelligently. It wasn't like I'm just trying to grind myself on the ground with like stupid circuit training. And then since I set it up like that, when you don't have a lot of time in the gym, a lot of times something like your core or like stretch it, that kind of stuff doesn't get done because you're like, I got to go. So I would throw in my core after I do like a row to a bench press. I would throw in some sort of core exercise, not because I think direct core training does a ton. I don't think it hurts you, but it definitely doesn't take away from like your bench. So I was like, it's rest and I'm not going to do it later. So I'll do it now. You know what I mean? And then since I trained for performance, it was like 30 seconds of something hard, like jump rope, for instance, right? And then I go rest 90 seconds, go back to the top and go again. So, yeah, I've trained like that literally for over a decade. And
how many? Because that's, while it's a giant set, I saw you list out the video where you listed out your protocol. It's usually 4 things that you're putting together.
Yeah.
All right. And then there's a longer break and then another 4 things, right?
Nope, same 4 things typically.
The same. Well, I know that, but you'll do the 4 things for say 3-4 sets.
Yep.
Then you go to supplementals, which you have a supplemental circuit.
Honestly, my supplementals are more based off feel. So I won't do 3 sets of 10.
Okay.
Like because I just get bored.
So the programmed are the first 4. Okay, and then so I'm trying to help people visualize.
Sure,
so you got 1, 2, 3, 4 things, done in
like
a circuit
A, B,
fashion.
C, D,
yes.
rest,
then,
A, B, C, D, rest, A, B, C, D.
Then after 3, whatever rotation.
Until I get up to the desired weight of the main movement. So like if I'm throwing for a 700-pound squat, I go as long as it takes.
Yeah. And then there's a hard line break.
Yes.
And then there's the next, which is based upon feel. Which could be buys, tries, abs.
But typically, I just take the main mover, and either it's going to be volume for like some type of technique or really dropping the weight and working my form so that like my last reps are my best reps.
Yes.
Because if I'm doing something really heavy, a lot of times I like to drop back and just kind of make sure that I'm ingraining those good reps at the end. So the last thing I did was just good when I left, or I stick them in some sort of assistance finisher that's based around the weak points of that lift. So like if I need good mornings for my squat, then that will be thrown in some sort of timed group. So if you say do 3 sets of 10 of whatever, I'm like, this sucks. I've been lifting forever. This sucks. It's not fun. And so now since I'm not like trying to win world championships and I train more the way that I want to train, I'm just like, I'll do good mornings to like a stone to shoulder to like a farmer's carry. And I'll do as many times as I can for 10 minutes or 12 minutes. Something that normally 3 sets 10 would have taken me anyway, except I won't do 3 sets 10. But if you stick me on a clock and you say, go, I'll do it. You know what I mean?
So once your body becomes adapted to the volume and the density, all right, just the sets, the rotations and the circuit.
Like the work capacity.
Because there's an adaptation process just for that, where
Absolutely.
people probably shouldn't even worry about the weights they're lifting, just get the number of sets done.
First 2 weeks, you're just going to be heaving.
Okay, once that's done and that adaptation's taken place, what is the progression from there? Is it changing the movements, or do you start trying to push the weight up linear over a period of time?
It really depends on the level of the athlete, right? Like if they're a linear athlete, which a lot of people are linear athletes, you know what I mean? And linear, most people have never followed a very good linear program or even a tweaked linear program to the point that they could still have more gains on it. So if that's the case, then it is very linear. But I only stick, when I train most of my clients, I would say I usually go in about 12-week blocks before I kind of shake things up on them a little bit. I use a lot of variation because strongman isn't powerlifting, right? Powerlifting is so specific to those three movements. And like, you guys are like execution, like surgery, you know what I mean? We're allowed to hitch. We're allowed to do whatever we want. It doesn't matter how ugly it is, you get it there, right? And part of that reason is because you're going to be asked to do, if you compete 3 times in a year, you'll be asked to do 20 different events in that year that like you'll find out about a couple weeks beforehand or a couple months beforehand. Like, figure it out, go. And sometimes it's literally some dude sitting in his basement going, you know, it'd be hard. Let me try to fill that up with like some water or something so it's like impossible to carry. Then we'll make it 500 pounds and see what people can do. And that's sometimes the event where it's literally you're replicating it by whatever, you know what I mean? Like you don't, it's not like you can go be like, oh, I'm going to go use the wooden log that this competition has. Like, you're like, I don't know, you're figuring it out. So there's a lot of variation, focusing on just making people brutally strong, right?
Yeah.
Like, you look at me, like, I am not a technique expert. I get by on like mistakes that I've made and like getting through and just put in the hard work and the hard time. And a lot of people aren't into the strongman training, but I really think a lot of people could gain something from just doing some of the things like sandbag carries or even farmer's carries, right? Like, because it's just moving big, cumbersome objects. And you think about like old man strength, or like you grab a hold of a wrestler, like you get a wrestler or a plumber or a carpenter, and like they have a certain base strength because they've just moved things. It's manual labor. That's where so much of my strength came from like growing up with farm animals and like doing construction work. Like, a lot of it was based there. And there's a lot to be said for a little bit of strongman work to kind of carry over to make a barbell feel like a toothpick or like very balanced. And you're like, holy crap, like they weigh these things out. Because in strongman, it's not a rare thing to show up at a contest. Literally, we had a contest that a bunch of my people did last weekend. The girls did not know what weights they needed to compete with until literally they were walking into the contest, and he's like, I don't know what weights we're going to do yet. It's that weird. And if you walk in and you've trained 6 months, and we're talking about high level events sometimes, you walk in and you're like, they said this stone is going to be 400 pounds or this deadlift is going to be like 600 pounds. And you get there and they're like, yeah, we changed it. Now it's 650. And you're like, deal with it, strongman. That's always, it's always like, deal with it, strongman. And that's cool, right? I love that about it, because for a guy who doesn't prep well, like I don't like execute, I get away with like athleticism and just gorilla strength sometimes, you know? And so that's why I picked up on strongman immediately. Like, I went from touched my first strongman implements, week later, won a show, 2 months later, went to nationals. And it was literally just because all of the dumb stuff that I had been training, not only like the normal barbell stuff, but all the construction things. So I really think a lot of people could gain from a little bit of strongman stuff, at least in their conditioning. It's like a prowler.
Yeah.
Like 12 years ago, people didn't know what a prowler was. People were like, only football players push sleds. Now, if you go to a gym and they don't have a sled to push, you're like, what kind of gym is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So things change. And I really think there's going to be a couple things that strongman's too unorganized to really take it off big yet. They're not there. But like, there's a lot of things that are kind of being picked up. Like CrossFit, people are starting to do strongman movements. A lot of powerlifting gyms now have logs or sandbags. So a lot of that's kind of coming around, and I'm happy to see it. Like, I think it's only going to make people progress faster.
There's a lot of crossover that where, say if it's a yoke, super yoke, you know, one of my guys out here discovered, and, you know, I've had a super yoke, which has basically been nothing more than a billboard for us. But he picked it up, and it's heavy, you know, just without anything, it's heavy. So he picked it up and, you know, thought about it. He's like, you know, if I do this, I don't have to do shit for my abs. I don't have to do anything. I just walk with it down and back. His walkout got better, you know, his pit, or he uses monolift, you know, so his pit got way better. You know, all this stuff got way better. He figured out where the threshold was. He found out where too much was, and then dialed it back down, and then just does his walk once every couple of weeks. He's figured out where his minimum is, you know, which that's powerlifting, is you got to find the minimal effective dose, especially the higher you are. It's more pulling people back than it is pushing them forward.
Absolutely.
Which is it's so backwards to how people think.
Absolutely.
You know, where the beginners need a kick in the ass and to do more work.
100%.
Where the strongest, you know, the stronger need, like, whoa, dude, that's it.
Yeah.
You're done. What the hell you mean?
Right.
You know, so, but even with them, they got to kind of push it, at least I always did, and the people that I work with seem to do the same thing. So I don't know, they push it and they find out where that edge is.
They want to be great if they didn't.
You know, then they back it down off that edge, and they know, okay, I just don't want them falling off the edge like I did. You know, then
I will say the yoke, like the super yoke, like for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, like you stick it on your back and you walk, right? Like it doesn't look like it'd be hard at all, but it is brutal. I will say, like, you know, if you do like a stupid high rep set of deadlifts where like you're like, I'm trying to prove something, and then like you have the flu for like the next day, the yoke is worse than that. Yeah. Like it is the number one drainer, right? So you need to be super careful with it. But I will say, as far as like, you know how like there's a tolerance to lifting heavy things, especially on your back. Like if you haven't had 500 pounds on your back for a long time, you put 500 pounds on your back and it feels like a truck. Like you lose it, like your tolerance is gone, right? A yoke is a great thing to throw like 800 pounds on your back, walk around for a little bit, 500 pounds feels like nothing, right? Like there's like a super maximal type of effect that carries over a decent amount of time. There was a time when I didn't have very much training time at all, and I would do my yoke walks on Sunday night completely backwards, but I do yoke walks Sunday night late, super heavy, and then Monday morning I would do squats, and I was hitting PRs like crazy. Even though we're talking about hours later, and I should be run down, I was hitting PRs like crazy just because my body was like, 600 pounds doesn't mean anything when you just had like 900 pounds on your back, you know what I mean? And like, there might not be a whole lot of scientific study behind it or anything, but there's a whole lot of...
Well, I can make the argument that your body really isn't entering the super compensate. It's really not broken down.
Sure.
It is broken down, but it hasn't really started the recovery phase.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even though you did sleep. Or I could also make the argument it wasn't enough work that you recovered throughout the night sleeping. So there's always, you know, the science is great. I'm never going to be one to bash the science guys ever. You know, I read every one of the science review journals that are out there, and they're a great thing. I'm glad that, you know, they're being published.
Yeah.
Out of all of them, I guess I'll give props to, you know, Greg Knuckles and his crew with Mass, because they always seem to hit really good topics. Some of the other ones just kind of like throw shit against the wall, and it's like, oh man, what's, you know,
or it's information for information's sake.
Yeah.
It's not applicable.
And for me, I'm reading that stuff more because I love it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a hobby. It's not going to help me in business in any way whatsoever. It's just, wow, this is.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, you know, it's what I went to school for. It's, you know, I can get pulled down a rabbit hole, and that's why I have these, because I print them, then I read them in paper form, so I can't get sucked down an internet rabbit hole going to see where, you know, they're summarizing the research. I can go find the research, read the research, so then the next thing you know, half my day's gone because I went back to who I used to be 30 years ago when I was really into all that shit. Yep. So I got stacks in the office. You'll see them just fucking printed out shit all over the place of that kind of stuff. But it's fun, but you can't go directly on that because everybody's so different. Now, there are things that are just common training laws.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, there's principles.
Yeah, there's principles that just are always going to be what they're going to be.
And yet there's still some outliers every once in a while. And somebody's always like, well, what about? And you're like, dude, you're not Ed Cohn.
Yes.
Sorry. Like, you're not. Like, I get that a lot. Like, people saying like, well, what about this guy? I'm like, you're not him.
Yeah,
like, you're not doing what he's doing. Like,
leverages matter.
Yes.
You know, a lot.
Yes.
You know, in some sports, a whole hell of a lot. You know, it's like, wow, look at this dude. And I'm like, say it's a huge deadlifter. Yeah. I'm like, well, you know, if you really want to learn from that person, see what they bench.
Yeah.
You know, because you take somebody that's got, you know, over a 900-pound pull.
Oftentimes there are some gorilla arms.
Yeah. And if they got a 550 plus bench, learn how they benched.
Yeah.
Because that's fucking impressive.
Yeah.
With arms like that, that's
absolutely
way impressive. You'll learn more about the bench from them than you will the guy that's built the bench. Yes. Whereas you take the guy with the stubby arms who's got a big pole.
Yes.
All right. You're going to learn more about how to deadlift from them than you will the guy that pulls with super long arms.
Yes.
You know, so it's kind of learning in reverse. Next one.
Okay. I meant to go to this one earlier because you guys were kind of talking about medical bills and things of that nature. But
stupid medical bills.
This one was, how do you deal financially with surgery bills? Recently experiencing just one surgery, I was overwhelmed in debt. I can't imagine paying off several surgeries while balancing life's bills. And you guys talked about, when you're not on salary, so you're not getting paid when you're not there.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that, Brian? And Dave, you can answer that as well.
I'd say I actually had a lot of really interesting conversations with so many of everyone that's kind of off camera right now earlier, and something that we said was like, one thing I've learned through this entire process is like, I don't know that I'd say like it was a bad thing. I don't know that things are good or bad. And like when you think about something like medical bills and you're like, how'd you possibly? And you're like, I don't know. Like you just do. It's like the family who has 8 kids and like barely paying the bills and putting food on the table, and they get pregnant again and they're like, how are we going to do it? And it's like, you figure it out, right? Like suddenly, like I can't tell you the last time I bought a shirt. I literally have not bought clothes for myself since I opened my business. At the beginning it was because you were saving money, and then I just couldn't afford to do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So like you just get through, and I can't tell you how many times that like you don't know where the money's going to come from or how it's going to happen, but then suddenly it shows up. You get an email, or like back in the day, like you'd hear stories about people like, yeah, man, I couldn't pay my bill, and then I got a random envelope in the mail where someone left me money or something, stuff works out. It does. Like if you are truly pushing and you're not being lazy and you're a good person, you're doing good things, like God, universe, whatever people choose to believe in, like, I don't know. Looking back on it now, I don't know. I don't know how I got through it. I did. I 1 second at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 moment at a time. You know what I mean? Like that's how.
Yeah, I'll follow up one thing whether you said, then I'll get into the medical bill part. Is you're talking about the bills, and I remember a couple times when the infancy of the business, working out of my house, and it was after I left training, so it was all in now. So basically just my wife's salary at the job that she had, which wasn't that great, but enough to be able to pay for the mortgage,
sure,
and a little bit of food,
right? Some tuna fish and ramen,
and it really wasn't a matter of paying myself. It was just paying the vendors, paying my suppliers, because I'm selling other people's products. I'm a retailer. And I can remember three or four times distinctly, clearly being in a position like, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've already extended my credit, with this supplier. I'm going to lose the supplier, obviously, because I can't afford the bill. And the 2 times, which were just really bad, like, this thing might be over. Then I checked the mailbox, and at the time I was selling Louis reverse hyper and the other equipment that he wanted to get out of. He had a mail order business. He wanted to get out of it, so he kind of push that off. He didn't push it off. He gave that to Tracy and I on consignment, and then we used that to build, the company that we have now. And I'd open an envelope, and there was a check in there from a university for like 5 reverse hypers. And I'm like, holy fuck,
We just did it.
I'm like, this just paid the bills. Now,
yep.
There's still, I still got to pay Louis for the hypers and everything else, sure. But there was terms that was net 30, so right. I had 30 days until I had to pay him. They weren't going to ship, for 8 weeks. Back then, the shipping time on equipment was long, 8 to 12 weeks. One thing Rogue did was disrupt the market with shipping times. So they came in and fucked everybody up, because we were all, you take the order, you got 16 weeks, 12 weeks, and that was standard practice. And they come in and it's like shipping in 1 week.
Right.
And the whole market. That's what you do if you're trying to build a company, is you want to disrupt the market,
yep.
And they did, and it was for the better of everybody in the industry, because everybody's shipping times had to come down. They had to.
Yeah.
Or you were just going to get fucking
right.
destroyed.
Or you were in a business.
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. You were going to get drilled. So you had to find ways to do it. But that may have been the only check for 3 years that was for 5 hypers
yep.
for 1 school.
Yep.
And that happened a few times.
Perfect timing.
And it was perfect timing. And it's just like, oh my, like why, and I remember sitting there saying, like, why did this happen? Like, and I had more issues back then than I had now, but why did this happen to me? Like, out of all people, why has this happened to me?
Right.
I'm the one that doesn't have this shit happen. You know,
Right.
I'm the one that only has adversity. Like, why did I just have this?
Why'd something good happen?
Yeah, like, why
Yes.
did this happen? I'm not used to this.
You're like suspicious.
Yeah, I'm so
even
used
like
to,
the universe. You're like,
yeah, I'm like so used to fighting
Yeah.
on my back.
me too.
You know, and it's like, why? And it's still to this day, you know, but it's a real fucking thing. I mean, if you truly have, and I'm not saying this from a religious standpoint, if you truly have faith that things are going to work out,
Yes.
and it's a deep faith that things are going to work out, they're going to work out.
If you're backing up with work.
Yeah, you got to back it up with
Gotta
work.
back it
Yeah,
up.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Have
But-
faith and want to work for it.
But I will say, even there have been times when like I needed something to come through, not that big of a deal, right? Like the big deals have always kind of worked out, like the make or break deals. But there have been plenty that I thought were make or break deals that like didn't work out, and I was like, oh no, and somehow you scrape together, and then you find a new way to make it. Like you sell something, or you like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like there's always a way. Like
Yeah.
like you said, like. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes, like, because there's going to be someone here watching this right now that's going, man, I had that. It didn't work out. So now I give up. And I'm like, bro,
No, it ain't like
there's
that,
still
man.
times, like, there's still times when it didn't work out that beautifully, but you still scraped it. You still kept going. And eventually, like, I totally believe that, like, the world moves out of the way of people who know where they're going. And, like, you had that vision and you were willing to work for it and you believed and you stayed positive. And you just kept going. And it worked out. Right. And when you needed, it seemed like you could not get a break, right? For years, for decades, it seemed like black cloud. And then one day when you really needed it, when that thing really needed it, just bam.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's so cool. You will never forget that.
You know, I'm Garth Brooks fan, so he's got, you know, a lyric, you know,
Yeah.
some of God's greatest gifts are ungranted.
Unanswered prayers, yeah, man.
Yeah, unanswered prayers. So that's true there. Now, from the medical bill standpoint, I've always been overly responsible when it comes to having medical insurance
Sure.
and having deductibles that we were able to afford and pay.
Smart.
And even if it meant the deductible might be a little bit out of reach, but it was going to cover, you know, whatever was going to happen, you
Yes.
know, because I had enough shit happen to me, you know, competing,
Yep.
you know, with torn pecs and, you know, things that had big medical bills, that I would rather have a higher deductible that's going to give me full coverage, and then a lower deductible that's going to get me stuck on some 80-20 thing, and then have $1 million medical bills with $250,000 that you can't afford to pay.
Smart advice.
You know, so really look at your plans, and when you look at your plans, look at it two ways. Look at it as far as what you can afford, okay, because that's the given reality. And then you have to look at it as, what if, worst case scenario?
Yes.
What if you were to accumulate over $1 million in medical bills in a year? And it can happen.
And you want to talk about ACL surgery. Like, it's so expensive. Medical bills are so expensive. One little thing that happens to 90% of athletes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, can bury you.
Well, anesthesia alone, just boom, you know, so, you know, a hip can be $200,000. Are
you serious?
You know, so it depends. It depends where you go, you know,
Sure,
and you
sure.
want to be able to give yourself the best options.
Yeah, you don't want to
as well.
skip on a hip.
You know, so you don't want to have to, you know, I see the shit, and I hate to say this, but I see the shit that Goggins has had to go through with the VA,
Yeah.
with his replacements and stuff like that. And it's just bullshit. It pisses me off. You know, our veterans should be, you know, I don't want to go down that road, but he's gotten the work that he needs done. But, you know, I'm not really too sure that, you know, the guy that does your elbows should be doing your hips, should be doing your knees, should be doing, you know, every joint in your body. You know, it's like, you want the guy, if you're going to have something replaced, you want the guy that's all they do. And during the days that they do surgery, they're doing 10 or 20 a day.
Yes.
You know, so they got,
It's routine.
yeah, it's like they can do this in
Changing
their
oil.
sleep. They do it so frequently, and then make sure that they have a couple days off to where they're sleeping and fucking resting. And the good surgeons do.
Yes.
You know, they're hard. I will also say this from my experience: the best doctors, best surgeons are going to be some of the hardest people to communicate with. So don't make your judgment based upon them. Make it based upon their assistant.
A lot of very good doctors have very bad bedside manner as well.
That's okay.
Like,
as long as their assistants,
they're like, they're so locked in to that thing. That's their specialty. They don't worry about talking to people because they're good at cutting people. And I'm like, you stick to that.
Yeah.
You stick to that.
They stick to that. Plus, they can't become emotionally.
Not at all.
You know, it'd be a really hard profession.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for
100%.
You know, surgeons and so forth, because they've helped me tremendously throughout my life. But
Where
at the
would we be
same
without
time,
them?
at the same time, you gotta leave your options as large as you can.
Absolutely.
You know, and as large as you can afford. You know, because I do understand that. And it's a weird fucking age that we're in right now, because a lot of the best general practitioners will no longer accept insurance.
They're bailing.
You know, my GP is private pay, so it's $150 to go and see, and if it's just regular checkup, $150. If I need a cortisone shot and a boil cut off my back and 10 other things done, it's still $150.
Yep.
So.
But at the same time, like, I feel like it's different level care. Like, I do. I feel like that person doesn't have a ton of patients that they're seeing. Like, each one of because I'm in the same situation, and every time that, like, you have an appointment, like, you truly feel like you had your questions answered, you weren't, like, rushed out the door. At least I do. As opposed to, like, a normal, especially, like, as I got higher and higher with searching for answers, the second that the specialist knew that it was not theirs, they were like, can't help you, you're out. And I'm like, can you point me towards? And they're like, no, I'm a specialist. Means I don't know. And I can completely respect that. Mm-hmm. But man, was it frustrating. That was so frustrating.
The other thing with my GP is it's by the hour. So if I go in and it's Eric Serrano, so everybody already knows this. Oh. So if I go in there and it's just a regular, I get my blood work way more often than most people do. So probably 4 to 6 times a year. So if it's just going in there to renew some meds, that I need refilled, and then reviewing the blood work, and I don't really have a lot going on, I got to sit there and listen to that fucker bitch about my diet or whatever and I'm learning the whole time. So I'm not complaining about this by any stretch of the imagination. He's taught me more about, diet, nutrition, health, and so forth, that, weight's not always, it does matter. Sure. But if you're going through certain health issues and you're having a lot of weight fluctuation outside of digestive issues, then that's not great for your health.
No.
You want to try to keep the weight as stable as it can be. But that's just more, a good doctor will tell you these things.
Yep.
They're not going to lecture you. They're going to communicate with you. The other thing to put out there, because I get asked this question a lot, don't expect to walk into a doctor and get hormone replacement therapy without creating some type of rapport with them, because everybody's like, well, how can I go in and get a prescription for testosterone?
Right. TRT.
Well, first off, there is TRT clinic, so you can go that route. You can spend an arm and a leg doing it. If you think that you need it, then obviously be tested for it, but you should have a rapport with your doctor to be able to have the conversation first, because if you walk in there a 270-pound meathead acting like a meathead, they're not even going to want to have the discussion with you.
No, it's like a heroin, like drug-seeking behavior.
Yeah, so you can still walk in there, the 275-pound meathead, and be polite,
but like
cordial,
we discussed earlier, you gotta break the stereotype.
You got to break the stereotype, because then they're going to look at it a little bit differently. They're going to look at it like, oh, look, man, this dude, he's a professional guy. He's got a professional job. I really don't want to see him buying shit on the black market then coming back to me because he's got health issues. So let's get him tested. Let's see what it is. And that's the route they're going to be thinking, compared to this fucking meathead won't quit talking about his bench press. Get the hell out of here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's whoever your GP is, you want to build a rapport, because you want that to be long term. Right. You know what I'm saying? And if it's not, find one that will be.
And having a GP that actually cares about you is always a good thing.
Yes.
What the main woman who started taking me through this is she actually goes to the gym, and when I started getting sick, she was my general practitioner for, like, if I have like a cold or something, I go see her. She gives me, like, because I didn't have a lot of health problems throughout my life, and but her caring about me gave me a different level of care and got me to a different level of personnel because she was an advocate for me. Because talking about medical stuff, if you are not your own advocate, it's very tough to get anywhere in the medical community, like even just get heard at all. So having someone to be able to call that's like, hey, I'm a doctor, I want you to see this patient, goes so far. It can get you in like months and months earlier. So building a relationship not only is a good idea for life, but like having your doctor actually care about your health and your benefit all over is a good thing in general.
Here's another thing from a medical standpoint that you just reminded me of. If you have a significant other that is in the hospital, or a good friend of yours that's in the hospital, you need to have a notebook, and you need to be taking notes.
Yes.
Or have a phone,
voice recorder.
And every fucking test that you hear ordered, write it down. Yep. And make sure it got done. It's mistakes happen.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that the nurses are bad, the doctors are bad. I'm just saying mistakes happen. Tests will forget to be done. And then nobody will take accountability for it because they don't want to get fired. They don't want to get their asses ripped.
Yep.
But if you have everything documented, what's supposed to be done, when it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to be done, and then it doesn't get done, and then you start texting the doctor or calling the doctor.
Yeah.
Or I've seen in one case somebody go to the doctor's house at 10 o'clock at night and beat on the door, with somebody in ICU basically dying of leukemia.
Yeah, well, I can see that.
And, it's like, you know what? Fucking do this.
Yeah.
And then it gets done.
Yeah.
If you're just winging it, and you don't need to go Google everything. Just listen to what's being told, make sure it gets done. And because you said the advocate, sometimes you can't be your own advocate.
No. Because
you're too doped up,
yes.
And morphine and drugged, and you can't.
Yes.
Somebody else has to, because you're either stuck in the ICU or in surgery, or once you're in recovery you can be your own advocate.
Sure.
But somebody during that time
who you trust, not like your crazy mom that like wants, like
yes.
make sure it's somebody that's like of sound mind. That
yes, especially once you leave the ICU is almost the safe. Well, more people die there, but it's the safest place because you usually have 2 or 3 nurses assigned to you 24/7.
Yeah.
So if you're a family member and you need a break, and your wife or whatever is in the ICU, you can go sleep.
Yeah.
As long as they're there. Yep. Even if something bad happens, it's fucking covered.
Yeah.
When they move to the main floor, start fucking worrying.
Yeah.
Because now you got, one
it's
nurse.
So much. It's so much on those professionals.
Yeah, you got one nurse per 4 beds.
Yeah.
Or something like that. That's where you need to be there. So you don't wish for people to be in ICU, but it's just
it's a good place for someone to be that's not in a super, super serious situation.
Yeah. It's just the fact of the matter of kind of how the whole thing works. And the more you can be on top of things, the more you could save your significant other's life. It would make the stay shorter, better, more
and also show that you're bought in and you're paying attention to what's going on.
Yes.
If you're one of those people like, oh, I'm too stupid. Those are big words. I don't want to, like, trust me, like, you'll get treated like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going, no, tell me again. Like they're immediately going to be like, okay, well, this person might be a pain in the butt, but they're going to make sure I'm doing my job. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
you manifest what you expect.
Yes. And not saying be a jerk about it, but just be like my grandma likes crushed ice. Please have crushed ice. Like whatever it's going to be that you're trying to, just make sure you say it. Don't assume that people are going to read your mind. And you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it, again, comes back to relationships and communication to get the end result.
Yeah. What do you got?
All right. For Brian, what is the definition of Neverate, and what does it mean to you?
So Neverate is the name of my gym, and it was actually a defunct band member's name, or a band. Like one of my friends had a band and it was named Neverate, and I went and saw them, and was like, "Hey man, what does the name mean?" And he's like, "Never and sate," and I'm like, "Yeah, what does that mean?" And he's like, "Satiated." I'm like, he's like, satisfied, never satisfied, right? And I'm like, okay. So I kept thinking about it. I was like, man, that's kind of cool. Like, I like how it's like, it's not obvious, but like, the more you think about it, then you're like, all right. And like, I'm a very thankful person, and I like, it gets real dicey when you talk about like thankfulness and versus like never satiated, or like never satisfied. And you're like, well, then are you never happy? And I'm like, different things. You know what I mean? What never sate means is like, even if you can no longer squat, right? We work with a lot of people who don't have their arms, don't have their legs, can't do things like normal people can do. That doesn't mean that they're not part of the team, you know? It means that, like, if you can't do something physically, then you're going to try to get better mentally. If you can't get better mentally, then you're going to try to get better emotionally. Like, it means, like, when I'm driving my car, I'm not just, like, mindlessly doing something. Like, I'm trying to, like, become a better driver, maybe, for instance. Like, it's just always constantly trying to improve your situation, you know? Constant and never-ending improvement all the time. That's just what it's about to me. It means different things to different people. And the good part about it is that it helped me create an umbrella, because it's not like, kill Puppy's gym, you know what I mean? So it has kind of like a different connotation. It's not like that, so I get a wide spread of different people, but it is known as like a place that just is very welcoming for people who we accept. And it has nothing to do if you lift 5 pounds or 500 pounds. It has to do with, like, you give what you have, right? Like, I don't care how strong you are. I can make you stronger. Like, if you come in and you quit after I push you a little bit, then I'm like, if you quit there, you're never gonna, like, it's not you, it's me. Like, sorry, you got to go. Right. And it's just built a family where there's a certain excellence expected. And since I was able to set it from the beginning, since I was the guy that I'm the gatekeeper that everyone needs to come through, I've been able to keep the quality to a level where it's no problem. Like, we don't have the same gym drama. Like, people aren't on their phones during sets. The only time people are on their phones or to videotape someone getting their PR so they can give it to them or something like that. Like, no one's talking about work. If people are talking about work, literally people be like, I'm squatting. Like, I'm sorry that your day's bad. We can talk about it later all you want. You can whine and complain all you want. But right now, that's not getting us better. Right now, we're doing this. And it goes back to that presence, you know. And so really, it's just about constantly being willing to sacrifice what you're currently at to become what you could be, you know what I mean? And having the courage to actually do that instead of just getting set in your way. Like, a lot of people, when I could no longer really lift as heavy as I could before I got sick, it would have been very easy to be like, okay, I don't want to lift heavy anymore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that because I'm not good at it anymore. I'm not the top anymore. And I needed to find different ways to make it cool, or different ways that I enjoyed the training. Just in general, it's all had to change because of all that. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've been through it too. Like,
oh yeah.
I actually I was talking to somebody the other day about, in a video, talking about starting over at zero and how, like, they're like, oh man, I hurt myself and, like, I'm so torn up. I'm like, dude, go check out Dave Tate's stuff and just read the laundry list, right? Like, I can give you a laundry list, but mine's not from so much lifting stuff. Like, the number of you guys who just have, like, destroyed yourselves and come back and destroyed yourself and started an empty bar, started, like, and like, again and again and again. I don't understand why people get upset. I can understand why people get upset when they get injured, but I'm like, when I was coming up, the first time I hurt my back and, like, was getting, like, weird tingly sensations down my leg and was, like, going numb and stuff, I was like, I'm in huge trouble here. And I reached out to, like, a lifter that I knew on T-Nation who was, like, an older guy, probably about my age, and super strong, like Zercher squat, like 700-pound kind of guy, and was like, has this ever happened to you? And he's like, yeah, look, here's what's going on. I explained and really, like, calm my nerves down. I still had to get serious medical attention done and stuff, but, like, he was able to calm me down. And now there's so much information out there. If they just type in Dave Tate injuries and watch, like, 5 minutes of video, they're like, well, he's had this 7 times. Like,
yeah,
this isn't that big of a deal.
Sometimes the hardest PRs to make are 135, 135, and 135.
Yes.
So it's the squat, it's the bench, it's the deadlift, it's getting back to a plate. You know, it's that sometimes because you're still, like you said, starting from zero.
Yes.
So, I mean, you have surgery, you come back, you're at zero, and it's frustrating. You know, and it's going to be really, really frustrating no matter how you approach it or what your mindset is or anything until you get a plate on the bar.
Yep.
You know, because you know that's the weird. Hardest fucking. It's like fine if you hit a plate, you're like, okay, it's cool now.
Right. Yeah.
I
can build from here.
Yeah.
But, like, if I couldn't have gotten here, it's almost like hope's lost.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, I took it down to the plate because it's happened so many times. But we before I had my first hip replaced, I remember the week before I went into surgery. There's a video somewhere on our channel where I'm using a cane to get up to the monolift. I got 3 plates per side with some chains. And it's an easy weight. So I just wanted to know how many I could do.
Right.
So pain was fucking ungodly. That's why I had the cane. So, I used the cane, get up there, and ended up doing 12 reps. I'm like, okay, 315, 5 chain per side, and whatever it was, 12 reps. I'm going to do this a month after surgery, or whenever it was. As soon as I do this, I'm going to know I'm better than I was before I went in.
Yep.
All right. So I ended up actually doing it 4 weeks after surgery. And when I went in to see the surgeon, I'm like, man, check this out. And he looks at it and he's like, is that squatting? I said, well, it is a really high fucking box. And he's like, no.
There's
like,
a lot of people on the internet would not consider this a squat.
It's like, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, you're not busting my balls about my high box because you're the one that told me to do this shit.
He's on YouTube commenting.
Yeah. And he's like, no. What you don't understand is we put this plate up in their hip because your hip was fractured as well. And they're held. He said, think about the little tiny screws that would hold a picture on a wall. He said, no, even smaller, the tiniest screw you can think of, until that bone grows around and absorbs through that plate. That's all that's holding that right now. And you're putting, how much is that? And I said, obviously too much to hang a picture on a wall. And I said, but I am like keeping constant muscle tension, and I'm coming up with
Right.
And I left thinking, fuck, I shouldn't be doing this. Yep. I need to back it down, let the bone heal. Yep. Where I thought, man, this is cool. I'm going to be fucking killing this in 6 weeks. And but that's when I'm like, okay, now this 135 thing is going to go back to 135. But even with that, getting to 90 degrees, because this way it was high, getting to 90 degrees at 135, after you're looking at 6 months.
Yep.
If sometimes you may never make it back to 135. I can't hold a bar on my squat back, or I can't hold. I got to use safety bars and stuff like that. So I have no 135 option.
Sure.
Not with a free squat.
Yep.
It's gone.
Right.
So, and those, I remember having this conversation with Casey Williams when he was going through his, colitis and Alsruhe. I'm like, Casey, look, man, it's going to slap you. You're going to be weak as fuck. Just 135, man. It's just let it take everything from you.
Yep.
Until you won't be able to do the bar. Just you'll be cool once you get it back to 135, and just focus on that, because don't focus on the 550 that you used to do or the 500 that you used to do. I'm not saying you'll never do it again, but I'm saying that's way too far off the focus,
right?
Especially when you have rehab and you got bones and you got all this other stuff going on, and the mental aspect you still need to deal with, especially if you're a competitive lifter. Everything that you've done and basically everything you think that you've existed for just got ripped away.
Yeah.
And you haven't matured enough to know, that this isn't my identity, but you still believe it is. It's bullshit that we tell ourselves as we get older. It still is a big part.
I'm going through it right now. Mm-hmm. Like when I got sick and lost my strength, like the strange part was, how like, how 135 should feel, 225, certain things, right? And when they don't, it's almost like if you go to push 225, like bench, and it doesn't move the way that 220, you're like, what magic is this? You know what I mean? Like it's like someone stole your power. And like the frustrating thing is you're like, it's never going to come back. It's never going to come back. And like you said, like 6 months, and like people, when you just get injured and you say 6 months, it's crushing, right? However, you look at your career, you look at my career, and you're like, 6 months. Like, you know how many times I've like not been doing anything for like 6 months? Like it's happened so many times, and here I am now, and you're going, oh man, I hope I can get there someday. I'm like, bro, like, just stick with it. Like everyone out there, just stick with it long enough. Like, keep coming back. Be too stupid to quit. Like that's how you get far in this sport. Yeah, I mean the way that I've gotten through the identity crisis of not being able to compete, you got to, for those listening, I mean, I've said it hundreds of times, but I can't assume the people listening now have heard it. I started competing in '83 and retired in 2004. So, I mean, that was the number one priority in my life. Anything else was a distant second. I'm not saying I didn't do anything else. I still got a degree. I still worked multiple jobs at a time to be able to do that, but it was my number one priority. And it got to a point where I couldn't grab a bar anymore to squat because the shoulder's frozen. I'm not going to get it replaced. I'm not going to get into the details behind that, but I'm just not going to do it. Success rate isn't good enough. When we break this down
You have an explosive day, which starts with the gah work. And then after that movement, you have the raw work. And then the puff, puff, puff work. It's part of the horse cocking method.
For sure. If you have no focus, you have to come to a conclusion at some point. Otherwise, it's a waste of gym time.